Uh, Good morning, everybody. I think we're going to make a start with our innovation workshop. My name's Saul Billingsley. I'm the Executive Director of the FIA Foundation. It's my pleasure and honor to be your moderator for this opening session. Before we get going, I've been asked to give you a few housekeeping messages by the organizers. We are expecting this room to be at full capacity today and possibly into tomorrow. If we are, there is an overflow room in the Helmer room, which is to your right as you go down the stairs. So people, if this room's full, please feel free to sit in there, and the iRAP team will be directing you in. Most important information, the toilets are located to your right before you go up the stairs by the cloakroom. Catering will be served outside the doors and to the right. Wi-Fi can be accessed by Capital 8. And the password is 88888888. Easy to remember. In the event of evacuation, a staff member will direct you out. Please progress to the door under the stairs and to your right outside. Hopefully that won't need to happen. Most important, our second most important bit after the toilets, the hashtag for this event is Innovation 2020. So if you want to spread the word, Innovation 2020, and don't forget that the handle for the Road Safety Conference is at Road Safety 2020. Now, before we get going, we're going to show a very short film, I believe, about innovation. Thanks. Okay, so for many of us who were veterans of the first Global Ministerial Conference back in 2009, this is the third and part of a very long journey. I think we'll all agree that we haven't achieved everything we hoped to achieve when we met in Moscow, certainly when we met in Brasilia 5 years ago. This conference in Sweden is our opportunity to make that right. We need to be very focused, single-minded on action, on what works. This innovation workshop is a great way to kick off the week. For us at the FIA Foundation, iRAP has been one of the bright points of the Decade of Action, a real program that delivers change. And we look forward to hearing from all of the opening speakers about what iRAP means for them. And most importantly, I think, how we can innovate to scale it up and deliver real action and save real lives in the 10 years to 2030. Before we get going, I'd just like to introduce our opening panel, extremely distinguished opening panel. In a few moments, we're going to hear from Jean Todt, who is President of the FIA and the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy on Road Safety. We'll then be hearing from the Honourable Thomas Eneroth, Minister for Infrastructure, who is our host this week and probably one of the most hardworking people on the planet right now. We'll then have a presentation from the ward. We'll then be hearing from our chairman at the FIA Foundation, Lord Robertson. We'll then have a presentation from Guangzhe Shen, who's the Global Director of Transport for the World Bank. We'll then hear from Young-tae Kim, who's the Secretary General of the International Transport Forum. Thank you. We'll then hear from Rob McInerney, who is, of course, CEO of iRAP, needs no introduction. And last but definitely not least, Professor Klaus Tingvall, what I describe as the godfather of road safety, and certainly the godfather of Vision Zero, a very benign godfather, will be closing out our session. I should also note, because I'm very woke, that we do have a manel this morning. I don't normally approve of manels. What that does mean, it's a very distinguished manel, and it's not iRAP's fault. I think it's the fault of the institutions that put men at the top of the organizations. It's certainly something we need to be changing. What it does mean is when we get to the question and answer session, if you have a Y chromosome, you're totally out of luck. So we're going to be taking questions from women first, and once we've exhausted those, then we'll get onto the men. So that's in the Q&A session. But now, to get us going, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Jean Todt, UN Special Envoy, FIA President, to make the opening address. Thank you, Jean.
Thank you, Saul. Excellencies, ladies, gentlemen, dear friends. I'm delighted to join here today, and in fact, we are starting a very hectic week, which is the third Global Ministerial Conference on Road Safety. Happy to join the presentation with Minister Thomas Enroth. Thomas, you have been doing, as Saul was saying, most busy man of the week, but I think you have been very busy over the last 2 years to make that possible. And happy to share also this panel, this presentation with my friend George Robertson, Rob McInerney, Klaus Stingwall. Opportunity for us to meet, and congratulations for your inspirational work on road safety. And of course, representative of the World Bank, Guangze Chen, and Young Tae Kim from IETF. I thank you again, Thomas, as a representative of the government of Sweden, for hosting us here, and to you all for your contribution to furthering the 2030 agenda. I would also like to applaud the International Road Assessment Program, iRAP, the World Bank and the International Transport Forum for their efforts and dedication in promoting safer roads, research and innovation. Indeed, a new global structure, or rather a new approach, is needed for us to deliver on our promises towards significantly decreasing road crashes. But what we need above all is to shift our thinking and our values. Also, innovation is essential in the constantly evolving sector of transport. We don't have to wait for the one invention that will solve our problems. Some argue that self-driving cars will provide the answer, that replacing imperfect humans with software will allow us to eliminate crashes. The first report of a road death involving an automobile in self-driving mode in Arizona in 2018 highlighted that we still have some distance to travel before this scenario becomes a reality, especially when the road infrastructure and signage that is necessary for such system to work in most countries around the world is simply not there. There is a lot of evidence showing the effectiveness in risk management and building systems that works with human fallibility, allowing for it rather than trying to confront it. If we can successfully engineer this cultural shift, the world will be able to follow the example of Sweden and other countries who are now working towards a model aimed at ensuring there are zero deaths on the roads. This means thinking in terms of a safe system approach and looking more broadly at mobility and how we can manage it. We will not travel by air or by sea if 1 million people died every year on planes and boats. Safety and the need to avoid casualties are core principles in other modes of transport and in fields such as the nuclear industry. Less than 10,000 deaths happen each year in aviation, maritime and rail, all combined. In terms of infrastructure, as you know, I have the honor of being appointed as the first ever UN Secretary General Special Envoy for Road Safety since April 2015, which recognizes growing relevance of this issue on the Sustainable Development Agenda. Within this mandate, I've traveled to more than 85 countries. I've taken a great interest in observing the road infrastructure and built environment, especially in developing countries. Inadequate safety of infrastructure can cost lives, while properly built and maintained roads obviously have the inverse effect. Thanks in part of the iRAP, World Bank and many partners here today, there has been a welcome emphasis during the UN Decade of Action for Road Safety on improving the design and the construction of new roads and the rehabilitation of so-called killer roads. In both urban and highway settings, infrastructures that serves to eliminate hazards and control traffic flow and speed is paramount. One positive development is that some, not yet all, of the multilateral development banks are now ensuring that transport loans, often used for road constructions, serve to promote safety. They carry our audits or roads given star ratings. This institution should work hand in hand with developing country road designers, agencies, and the construction industry to make sure all new projects result in world-class outcomes. There is very little value and respect to invest in infrastructure that ultimately brings devastation to communities, usually the poorest communities, and we all agree that we cannot accept that anymore. All organizations who use public finance to provide aid to developing countries should do everything in their power to avoid the creation of environments that encourage speeding and endanger the lives of motorists and other road users. Countries in the global north have been successful in achieving a reduction in casualties. There is no reason why we cannot do the same in the global south, where most of the fatalities occur, if the political will, the public support, and the funding are there. We must do more to ensure that safety is a measurable indicator and outcome when building our transport systems in the vehicles, the infrastructure, and innovations that are developed and deployed. It is only if we build our transport system with quality, safe, and worthy elements which protect our citizens that we will achieve our vision of safe and sustainable transport for all. Thank you for your attention, and again, I wish you a good session and a great week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jean, for those inspiring opening words. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our host for the week, Minister Thomas Eneroth, to make a welcoming address. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and thank you, iRAP, and thanks, Jean-Todt, for warming words, and all the panelists here. Of course, welcome to Stockholm, and welcome to Sweden. I've said for some years now, since we're preparing this conference, that when you come to Stockholm, it probably will be very cold and snowy, but warm inside. But actually, it's not that snowy. Huh? So I think it will be very warm and very good discussions, and it's important because there are a lot of people gathering here in Stockholm, Sweden this week. It's 80 ministerial delegations are now registered for the conference. It's over 1,700 participants from over 140 countries. That says something about the interest and how important the question about road safety is. And the 2 days of conference are important, but pre and post events like this indicate the importance that all the stakeholders take their responsibility and that we all have to need to work together. And of course, it is a great challenge. 1.4 fatalities per year is a number that's almost impossible to understand. We are looking now at an epidemic development, slowly eating both human capital and national assets, little by little, piece by piece. So every individual loss, be it a man, woman, or child, is unacceptable. We have done much, but we must do even more, and we must act now. I want the message to be clear on Thursday. We can do it. We can reverse the trend by not repeating our mistakes. By using today's best knowledge, we can together move forward. Sweden has been able to reduce the fatalities with over 80% since we had our worst years some 50 years ago. Knowledge and skills are the base for rapid development, and this includes policy skills. Vision Zeros, with Klaus Tingwell as the godfather, I heard now. This is a way to build a transport system for human, respecting human weakness and human capabilities. And in Sweden's way forward, we know that this is the right way of working. This is the right design, the proper speeds, and the protective technology together. We can make the traffic safe. So our solution isn't the solution to copy in detail, but the basic principles are general, and they actually work everywhere. And it doesn't take a lot of money. It only need that we take road safety into consideration whenever planning or building a city, developing transport system, arrange logistic and transport. And all of us have shared responsibility. All can do more, all can do better. I'm a politician who likes to get things done. Policies and target documents are of course very important, but action and concrete rules to change the way we work with road safety is absolutely necessary. So in Sweden, we have never invested as much in road safety as we do now. Road safety cameras, adaptation of speed limits to the road safety standard of medium barriers, new technology, geofencing, automated and connected vehicles, and the importance of a good negotiations and work together with automotive industry. That's a part of the Swedish success. So last year, we had the lowest number of people killed in road accidents, 223 people. But now we're raising our ambitions for the Vision Zero. Last week, the government in Sweden decided that we will have 50% reduction in deaths over the next decade in our way of achieving the Vision Zero. And I believe that the overarching goals of policies in general and the 2030 agenda in particular is to build a better world for each generation. So the world has decided to use the UN Sustainable Development Goals to focus on urgent topics. Road safety is one of these integrated and indivisible goals. So if we can understand and develop links between road safety and other goals, we can achieve so much more. Let me take one example. Goal number 5, SDG, is about gender equality. And gender equality is achieved when women and men, girls and boys have equal rights, equal conditions, opportunities and power to shape their lives and contribute to the development of the society. That's why a gender equality perspective is needed also when we talk about road safety work. It's important not just to build the infrastructure based on men and cars, to be honest, but to build it on all the population's expectations and right expectation to have a fair and just and well-functioning infrastructure. Even when it comes to design of vehicles, I mean, when you use crash test dummies that only function how the men is built, it actually doesn't provide the best tests results or the best possibilities for both men and women. This is how we must work with SDG on every part of road safety questions. Gender equality, climate change, other SDG goals. And that's what I want to see during this week, how we can close together the work that's done with road safety and the UN possibilities, and UN work with SDG. And we need results. And this conference provides a good opportunity to raise the motivation to focus on action and commitment to this issue. We know that challenge differs between different countries, I know that, but together we will find solutions that support positive developments around the world. The global nature of road safety challenge calls for us. It calls for global partnership, but also for cooperation. I will present the Stockholm Declaration on the conference, and it is built upon inputs from our scientific experts group and the work laid out in the declarations from the 2 ministerial conference, both in Moscow and of course in Brazil. And it is my ambition that this conference and the Stockholm Declaration will provide us with the opportunity to repeat our strong commitments to achieving the global goals by 2030. If road safety is to serve as a catalyst for change, the involvement of many sectors of society and accelerated action by a broader range of partners are needed. So the result that we do here this week, this will actually save lives. We are saving lives. This is important. Welcome to this journey. Feel the responsibility, but also the joy of making this together. Thank you, and welcome to Stockholm and Sweden.
Thank you, Minister. I'm sure we all agree that the work that Sweden's done to make this conference totally integrated with the widest spectrum of SDGs is really valuable, really important, and is going to make the difference between the last decade of action and the next. Now, this is an innovation workshop, and we have an innovation award. And to present it, I'd like to invite Lina Konstantopoulou, the Secretary General of iRAP, to come and introduce it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, and for so many of you dear road safety friends, as you may know, the road assessment program began in Europe as a partnership of the British, the Dutch, and the Swedish governments, working in partnership together with European mobility clubs and safety charities in order to tackle the second part of the equation of the safe system approach, safe infrastructure. After almost 20 years, Sweden is still an example many nations aspire to copy. They have seen steady reductions in both fatal and non-fatal road traffic accidents since they launched their safe systems approach in 1994. I'm truly proud and grateful to be here today to present the iRAP Innovation Award to the Honourable Thomas Eneroth, Minister for Infrastructure, Government of Sweden, recognizing the life-saving safety impacts of the 2+1 road design. Since its development in 2006, 2+1 road design innovation has been seen to achieve a remarkable reduction in severe crashes in Sweden. Furthermore, it's been also copied in other countries, transforming safety in Spain, in Ireland, in New Zealand, and in Australia, saving thousands of lives. In closing, I would like to once again extend my heartiest congratulations to our fellow Swedes. May the award be an encouragement to you to continue the excellent work you have done, and may others also draw inspiration for you to do the same. Thank you.
And thank you very much. This is an honor, and of course, it's not an honor for me only. It's for all Sweden, for Claes Tingvall, for all people who have worked with this, for representatives in the automotive industries, politicians, people in organizations. I'm very proud on behalf of all Swedes that have worked with road safety. And of course, if this can inspire others, it's a fantastic work that we've done. But this is an honor, and I will thank you very much for this award. Thank you.
Thank you, Lina, and Minister. Award very well deserved. I think Sweden's leadership and innovation in many areas, and particularly for our foundation in terms of child health and child rights, has been truly inspirational. That leads me on to introduce our next speaker, my own chairman and boss, Lord Robertson of Port Ellen, chairman of the FIA Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you, Saul, and Mr. Minister, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I congratulate the Minister both on the award, but also on the arranging of this conference and welcoming us here to Stockholm and arranging such pleasant weather for us to enjoy in the capital of this country. And it's very appropriate that this conference should be held here in Sweden, because Sweden has long been the preeminent leader in road safety, both in thought and in action, and indeed results as well. Vision Zero is spreading across the world, even if it's not as rapidly as we would all have liked it to do. But now Sweden is offering us friendship, leadership and great generosity in bringing us all together here this week in Stockholm. We're going to spend some time this week looking back at the successes and indeed some of the failures of the UN Decade of Action for Road Safety. But the main objective this week must be to identify winning strategies for achieving that ambitious target of halving global road deaths within the 10-year period. And iRAP has been one of the great success stories of the road safety decade. It has matured into a recognized global assessment standard, and it's maintained its ethos of a not-for-profit charity with free-to-air assessment protocols. It's built alliances with development banks, engaged with governments in over 100 countries, developed a key working relationship with the World Bank's Global Road Safety Facility, with great support from Bloomberg Philanthropies, which should be well recognized. But most importantly, it has influenced road building and rehabilitation. As the posters behind me say, $75 billion worth of road investment, with safety upgrades to iRAP specifications in 49 countries. So iRAP will be integral to us reaching our health target of halving road deaths in the new decade of action for the SDGs. And it'll be crucial to meeting the voluntary road safety targets approved by UN member states for safer road infrastructure. But, we must do more. I helped to lead the campaign that secured the first ministerial conference on road safety. And this is my third conference. And frankly, I never envisaged that these conferences would simply be glorified talk shops. We'd all of us hoped for much better than that. And yet, since that first ministerial conference in Moscow in 2009, at least 2 million children have died on the world's roads. 100 million children have been injured. And that's not just enough, it is more than enough. And so this week, let's have no more tolerance of the platitudes from ministers who turn up here but then turn off when they get back home. And even less tolerance for the ministers who couldn't even be bothered to show up at all. No more excuses. That has got to be the message. You know, we know the problem. We know the problem. Too many badly and dangerously designed roads which don't meet the needs of all the people using them. And we have the solution. The solution is stored in iRAP's online system called VIDA. And let's always remember, you know, maybe in this road safety village that we all inhabit, we know this, but the message needs to get out beyond it. We're talking here about human lives. And iRAP's new Vaccines for Road update, you know, which was issued to you this morning as you came in, contains many human stories, broken down by different categories of trauma, serious brain injury, fracture, amputation. You know, these are the realities when we talk about injuries on the roads. So please go to the iRAP website and read these powerful reminders that the work we're engaged in is not ultimately about engineering or about statistics. It's about human flesh and blood. So we've got all of us to do much more. And I'm pleased to announce in what is possibly the first funding pledge of this important week, but I hope it won't be the last, that the FIA Foundation's board has agreed that iRAP will remain at the very heart of our programme over the next 5 years to 2025. We are going to commit ourselves to maintaining at least our annual core funding of €1 million over this period, and we fully intend that we'll be doing more. Later today at our Child Health Initiative event, the FIA Foundation will join iRAP and FedEx to officially launch the star rating for schools. After more than 7 years of development, after beta testing at more than 600 schools throughout the world, this life-saving application is ready for prime time. There's no journey more important than the journey to school. And we look forward to working with iRAP and the many partners involved here, including the FIA clubs and some of the world's leading road safety and urban NGOs, to roll out our star ratings for schools. So we're doing our part for iRAP, but others must also step up and do much more. If other donors, bilateral and aid donors, for example, could match our €1 million as core funding per year, it would more than double iRAP's ability to operate effectively, to operate with more free-to-air support for the rapidly expanding program partners around the world, more free-to-air support for the existing and innovative new products that are being used in more than 100 countries around the world. We'll allow it to do more regional teams, to work side by side with all the partners needed to ensure that a road is built and maintained to be safe for all its users. It would allow more support for developing country programs and building the relationships that matter, and more expert training to increase homegrown road safety skills in transport and infrastructure departments. And it would allow more assessments to be completed, more roads and highways upgraded to the global standards. In other words, more lives saved, more trauma, more injuries prevented. You know, €1 million for a development agency like SIDA or DFID in the UK, that is pocket change, loose change. You could even club together in the agencies. Now, of course, I understand fully that there are grant and procurement rules that bind people's hands, but excuses are actually easy. Finding a way through is hard work. You know, I was Minister of Defence in my country, and one of the things that I remember vividly doing one summer afternoon was to destroy the last anti-personnel landmine in the United Kingdom. The Ottawa Convention throughout the world decided that the world could not do any more in the area of anti-personnel landmines and said eliminate them. And the United Kingdom, despite the objections of many in the armed forces, despite people who said it can't be done, we did it, and I blew up the last one of those anti-personnel landmines. So people should not think we can't do things. These things have been done, will be done, have been done, and we can do it here as well. You know, because for the campaign to ensure minimum 3-star safety on our strategic networks around the world, doubling iRAP's core funding would be utterly transformational for the organization and for the work that it does. This is an innovation workshop with some of the best brains and some of the leading institutions in the global road safety community assembled here this week. And we must take this opportunity to be innovative, to use our imagination, to come together in support of this great program. And we should remember that innovation doesn't have to mean complexity. The simplest things done for the first time are innovative, and we can find them to do as well. Like governments finding a way through their bureaucracy to fund the FIA Foundation's core funding. We could agree to sit down and talk and actually get that done this week among the ministers who come to Stockholm as well. You know, Jean Todt, as the UN Special Envoy in this matter, and his high-level panel that I'm involved with and the FIA Foundation supporting it, have done a huge amount of work in raising the public profile, raising public awarenesses, but we need to go beyond that and face the challenge of realizing our full potential. We have a tool in iRAP in our hands that can save millions of lives between now and 2030. So let's put it to work and make the roads a lot safer than they are today. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, George. Thank you, Minister. Now, our next speaker is Guangzhe Chen, the Global Director of Transport for the World Bank, to talk about the World Bank's safeguards. Thank you, sir.
Is that how it works?
You can use the mic. This is-
Thank you. Well, good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor to be invited to speak in this session. I was asked to talk about the safeguard and catalytic role of multilateral development bank on the subject of road safety, obviously targeting in low and middle income countries. So I have a brief presentation. This is really to reflect what we've been doing, what we will continue to be doing on this particular topic, and to share our experience. So this is even before the first global ministerial conference on road safety. I want to recognize a report that we did joining with the World Health Organization in 2004, which we really, I think, I would call it one of the landmark study recognizing the importance of road traffic injuries and fatality as on a global platform, and also highlighting as a development challenge in the world. They also identify key injury risk factors, national level prevention, and strategy based on a safe system approach that John mentioned. This is also recognized the role of multilateral development bank. I'm here speaking on behalf of the World Bank, but I'm sure many of our regional development bank, my colleague from ADB, share a similar views. So this is just to highlight that particular report, and we can reflect on the lessons we have learned. Now, since then, a lot of things have happened. In 2006, we established the Global Road Safety Facility at the World Bank. We host it, but this is a facility not just benefiting the World Bank. In fact, iRAP is also a beneficiary of this facility, is really promote this agenda. In 2008, road safety becoming one of these sort of key pillars in the transport business strategy. We call it safe, clean, and affordable transport for development. And then from 2015, 2016, we start to make progress on that, basically introducing road safety components or indicators in all our road and urban transport projects financed by the World Bank. And this is significant in the sense that basically making sort of is a mandatory requirement for our team to recognize this challenge in designing a road project, of course, working with clients. In 2017, the World Bank sort of championed the establishment of this sustainable mobility for all initiative, for which road safety, safe transport, is also recognized one of the key pillars. And then 2018, we established the road safety standard under our new environmental safe social frameworks. This is a little chart to show you sort of our portfolio in the transport sector worldwide. Obviously, we work in low and middle income countries. Our portfolio, this is existing loan that we roughly is about $38 billion, of which, of course, is in different mode of transport. But rural roads, highways, and urban transport still account for something like 70% of our investments. And all these investment will require there's a road safety component with performance indicators. So in a way, we're leveraging something like over $20 billion of investment worldwide in the different part of the world. And I should also mention that this is the World Bank finance, and all those projects, of course, we influence the client countries, their complement investments in the same sectors. And along this line, in 2017, I mentioned the fact that the World Bank adopted so-called new environmental and social framework, for which the road safety standard is one of those standard requirements. The road safety team, based on this requirement, we developed what we call a good practice note to support the project to implement this environmental social framework requirements. This is structured around project cycles, basically looking at activity from project design, implementation to operation, and what are the elements that we need to bring in, learning from all the good practices that the world have developed over the last decades. And the focus of the good practice note is on investment finance project. But in the World Bank, we also do other investment projects like program for results or policy-based lending. But we are applying all these standards to those operations as well. The good practice, though, looking at sort of 4 different types of investments that we associate with. One is basically within the transport sector. This is looking at highways, railroads, bus rapid transit system, metros, etc. But we also look at other type of transport projects that are not necessarily road infrastructure improvement related, but they are associated with impact on traffic mix, on a vulnerable user, for example, impact on pedestrian, bicycling, motorcycling, impact on volume of traffic. So this is the second type. But we also have construction-only project work. For example, we finance dams, which will associate with access road. So we apply that standard for this type of project as well. And last but not least, but also vehicle procurements. Because in some low-income countries, we also finance, for example, bus rapid transit system. We help them to support the procurement of new standard buses, and that's where the safety standard also apply as well. The good practice note adopt a very risk-based approach for its recommendation. Traffic and road safety risks arise from, as we know, interaction of many elements, from road to road design, engineering, traffic speed, extent of road, and the type of road use, and road user behavior, and post-crash care. And this is so-called, typically used to be called the 4-year approach. So we take into account all these elements, and then identify sort of 4 different categories of risks of the project involved, from high to substantial, moderate to low risk. And then we apply our sort of design standards and financings along with performance indicators according to different category of standards. This is, and based on that, we develop mitigation measures on the level of risk and type of the project that we finance. Here on this slide, I want to show that the starting with moving to a little bit, we talk about the Global Road Safety Facility that established in 2006. This is a global multi-donor trust fund managed by the World Bank. Its mission to help the governments develop road safety management capacity and scale up road safety delivery in low and middle income countries. The goal is to provide funding, knowledge, technical assistance. This is really to complement the work that we're doing. And this is a trust fund, they're all grant financing. But this is obviously, we mobilize this money from different donors, from UK government, from Bloomberg Philosophy, and other organizations. But we're using this funding is really to provide the catalytic analysis and assistance and knowledges. But then the key thing that we see that we complement our work very well is that the work that we're doing under GRSF, we can then leverage our World Bank finance to support the implementation. And this is not just World Bank. For example, Asian Development Bank and others also benefit from this facility. They also can leverage their financing to support road safety interventions in the project that we support. Considering a road safety investment plan that was generated, estimated that if all the countermeasures identified and are implemented, this is talking about a new sort of recent award of the grants under GRSF, we can estimate the number of lives saved or the number of lives saved in developing countries over the next decades. And this is just give you a magnitude of the estimate on the impact of these financings. This is focused on the GRS grant financing, not necessarily the World Bank finance, which is being leveraged multifold by these grant facilities. Of course, under GISF, we're also providing capacity building and trainings for many local organizations, individuals, to lead road safety activities in many of the low and middle-income countries. These organizations, including, in fact, many of the partners of iRAP program in a country like in Thailand, in Brazil, in China, India, and Vietnam, and etc. For example, I think if a colleague from Thai, we launched the iRAP Center of Excellency in November 2018 to really help the authority in Thailand to implement this many of the iRAP initiative. This is just a few examples. I'm probably not going to go into detail on the activities that are funded by GISF and also in partnering with other organizations. This is one example that we have on a project that in Tianjin, China, where we funded one of those projects that changed the road design and tackling the road safety requirements in that locality. And the end result of that is that to meet at least a 4-star ratings for the road users in this. This is just, I think, for expert on this room, you can tell the story behind it. I'm not going to go to the detail, but I just give you an example. And this is another example in Mumbai, in India, where we also provide this kind of changing. In fact, this one, I think we're working with Road Resource Institute in partnership with them in designing the sort of road structure. This is giving you a before and after from 1-star to 3-star standards after the support under the GISF. And of course, then, this is obviously being leveraged and implemented by World Bank supported urban transport operation in Mumbai. A total of some 200-kilometer road was designed or redesigned using these standards. So this is just a very brief outline of the work we're doing at the World Bank through in terms of our standards, of policy, but also extended to a global road safety facility. And on that, I think the message I really want to emphasize is the leveraging. It's not just about X amount of money to provide the technical assistance, but it's the financing, the leverage through the, and also not just from the World Bank, but other multilateral development bank, but also the government themselves. Because ultimately, financing, ultimately for road safety improvement has to come from the host governments. And our role is to play that catalytic. And finally, I just give you like a 3-minute videos. If we can play that, let me see. Yeah. Thank you.
It was at Christmas time. We decided to spend this special time in Bolivia with my family. When we arrived at the airport, the question arose, who is going with whom, in which car? I looked behind, expecting to see them parking, but they weren't there. I knew that something happened. I asked louder, where is my son? And I saw Luca lying on the street, lifeless.
Mariam Kasim attended senior high school, who met an untimely death on their busy road due to a speedy car.
We have a major challenge with overspeeding in Accra now. As of 2017, 70% of the road crash victims were pedestrians. It's been reduced to 55%. With the support of Bloomberg, people would go home safe.
It is not by chance that the results are getting better. The road safety project supported us technically. That led us to make progress.
I am a firm believer that road safety should start from the design stage. In Ghana, our road agencies use iRAP to be able to treat those areas that crashes occur.
People will definitely make mistakes on the road. We need to use a safe systems approach where we're not just looking at the roadway, but we're looking at the policies, the roadway, the engineering, the enforcement. It's a whole systemic picture.
क्रास बेरिङ लगाउनभन्दा अगाडि एक्सिडेन्टहरू परिरहेको थियो। यो लगाइसकेपछि धेरै रोकथाम गरेको छ, यो मान्छेहरू पनि बचाएको छ यसले।
म सुर्खेतदेखि काठमाडौँ लङ रोडको ड्राइभर, नाइट चलाउन लागेको 14 वर्ष भइसक्यो। 6 महिना अगाडि कर्णाली राजमार्गमा जाँदाखेरि ओह्रालो थियो, ब्रेक फेल भइसकेपछि मोडेर भित्तातिर लगेर मैले बचाएको थिएँ। गाडीमा 36 जना पेसेन्जर थिए। बेरियल भएको कारणले गर्दाखेरि कसैलाई केही भएन। म सेफमा भएको कारण मैले छोराहरूलाई भेट्न पाएको छु।
Road crash injuries and deaths are preventable, especially with a safe system approach. The GRSF is supporting the development of observatories for road safety around the world so that countries can see the size of the problem and target solutions. Road crash deaths and injuries cause human loss, suffering, grief, and an economic burden which can be as high as 5% of the GDP of low and middle income countries. The question for us isn't can we afford to invest in road safety, but can we afford not to?
Thank you, World Bank. Powerful video. I think those of us who have seen Sophia speak in person about the loss of her family are always touched by A, her courage, but B, the sort of the depth of trauma that every family experiences. And this is really what we're here to try and prevent today. Now, to talk about how data and policy can help us to do that, it's a great pleasure to introduce Young-tae Kim from ITF. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we already shared a lot of important things, so my presentation can be a little bit more addition to what we can share today. So today I will focus on the relationship between policy and data. There is an old saying in English, seeing is believing. So I know that seeing is achieving, because we have to know the reality before we do something in a relevant way. Otherwise, it can be really misleading in some sense. So if you see the table, some people believe that in every country there should be an income level, a certain income level that facilitates the reduction of the fatalities. But this is, in a sense, wrong. Maybe in each country it can make sense, but if we compare several different countries, basically there is no specific income line that facilitates the reduction of the car crash and accidents. Because if you compare the cases of British society and American society, there is definitely a different level of income when we had a worst situation in both of two countries. So basically it's not easy to generalize that we have a certain level of income in the society that defines the starting point for reducing car accidents. And in fact, in most cases in OECD, it was in 1970s that government started to focus on the reduction of the fatalities. So for example, this is a statistic in 2018. There is an honor student and some not so good students, if you see the list of the countries. And I think Korea, my country, is not really one of the honor students. But I think this kind of table, the statistical table, shows that we are now facing a certain reality, and we can compare ourselves compared to our neighbor countries in the same direction that we are going and what we can achieve in the long term. So this is a really important task that can be done by international organizations like iRAP and ITF and World Bank. So basically, someone has to take the lead, and this is a really good source of information that we can rely on. And for example, if I talk more about my country, Korea, I was in the Ministry of Transportation until 2017, and I was also responsible for road safety and greening transport and coordination of different transport policies. But at the time, we saw that statistic, and our leadership, the minister and vice minister, were really ashamed because, oh, Korea, in terms of volume of trade, and we are ranked on the top in general, but in terms of fatalities and road safety issues, we are still left behind. So at the time, that made us really sensitive, and that made us a little bit boost up our policies to reduce more the accidents on the road. So in the end, I think during the past 6 years, and there was a 25% improvement. So I think there's a really good competition in a good sense, and we can compete for the good objective and goodwill. So recently, some universities, they translated road safety reports written by ITF in Korean language. So this is a really good move. And actually, that's happening in many of our member countries of ITF. But as you see, the Scandinavian countries, the top countries, they are really good honor students in terms of road safety issues. So I think we have to learn a lot from the countries in this region. And in terms of data, we produce regularly several reports. So in ITF, we report annually, we publish a road safety annual report. So 2019 version was the latest version. And also we have several other the reports coming from other international organizations like WHO, and some individual countries, they also publish their reports, and we get a lot of information from our member countries. For your information, ITF is now composed of 60 member countries, and 44 are Europeans and 16 non-Europeans. So basically, we are still like a group of advanced countries from the relative point of view. We are now trying to reach out to non-European countries, especially focusing on developing countries and underdeveloped countries, because we know that transport, the questions are not the questions of one or two countries. The transport, the questions and problems are global problems, so we can learn from each other. So that's why we are focusing on cooperating with a lot of international partners and non-ITF member countries. And that's one concrete example that's happening in real life. So as of July 1st, 2018, the French government was trying to encourage the reduction of the speed on the road. So on the national road, it used to be 90 per hour, but now most of the local governments, they try to reduce the speed to 80. So actually, I drove myself some time ago in France, and I saw quite different situation compared to previous years. I think that's a really good sign. And even in Korea recently, there was a debate, because in the urban areas, mostly it was 60 kilometers per hour, but recently we decided to reduce it to 50. So I think we have to analyze the reality, but definitely we can expect an improvement on the road situation, because usually we can think about three factors: the human factors and vehicle factors and road factors. So road factors, thanks to iRAP, we try to improve the road situation. We can identify vulnerable spots. We can improve the weak points on the road. And we should continue to do a lot of campaigns. But actually, if you try to reduce the speed limit, that can really change the behavior of the drivers. So it can definitely have a positive impact on the road safety issues. And also, I think that's last year we published speed and crash risk. So that's a kind of the summary of the correlation between the speed and crash risk. So this kind of publication is a really good foundation for policymakers, because sometimes the policymakers, they believe that this is a way to go, and the debate sometimes becomes too ideological. So without really having something concrete and ground to lean on, then we just say this is a way to go. But international organizations and the leading countries, they have to produce some concrete data and evidence, and we can share them with the policymakers to make them believe that we have to do this really. And controversy resolved by the safe system policies. That's what I already mentioned in France, what's happening really now. And basically, the central government decentralized the power to decide. So local governments, they can decide. They can decide if they take still 90 kilometers per hour, but on the condition that the road condition should be compatible with the recommendations and technical specifications provided by the central government. So this kind of good governance system can really bring something good for the road situations. So in France, only one department still maintains 90 kilometers per hour, but rest of the department, they now adopted 80 kilometers per hour. And I know that iRAP contributes a lot, but I think Rob can explain more about iRAP, so I will skip this in the interest of time. And we also, in ITF, we also have the Safe City Initiative. That's a network for cities. Mainly, we are in constant contact and dialogue with the member countries, but mostly the central government. So especially the Ministry of Transport. But we know that sometimes Ministry of Domestic Affairs and Ministry of Industry, they can all contribute, but our main contacts are still Ministry of Transport. But we still have the city network, focusing on the cities, safety in cities, urban areas. So that's really important. And because at some point, the local governments have to play a very important role to improve the situation in urban areas. And as we saw in the movie clip, a lot of pedestrians and cyclists die in the crash on the road, and basically they are more than half of the deaths on road. So that's why the local government's role is really important, and we can make some the legal measures, but at the same time we have to have a holistic approach to prevent the worsening of the situation. And finally, I know that through this event, very important and ambitious event in Stockholm, we try to make one voice to supporting our future direction on the road safety and the maintaining the speed of 30 kilometers per hour is really important and it can work. So now technology develops and we have better cars and we have better roads, but that doesn't mean that we can drive with unlimited speed. So at the same time, if you think about safety, and we can be exposed to a threat, and our family can be exposed to threat. So to prevent the accident and many bad things, we have to focus more on the safety side as well. So basically, that's what I prepared for today, and this is very short, but for the next several days, we have our staffs around here, and Veronique, and Steve, and Alex, so we can all be your friends, and we can answer any questions. So thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I think you've given us our rallying cry for the week, which is let's end it with everyone agreeing that maximum 30 kilometers an hour in urban areas is what we want to be going out and fighting for. It really is a speed vaccine which can save lives. Now, the star of the show, I suppose that's right, isn't it, Rob? Rob McInerney is going to give us his presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Sol, and that's 5-star, not 1-star for all of you to know. Look, it's my pleasure to be here again. This is our favourite event of the year. It's where we bring the best of the best together, all of you here in this room. And what our goal is today is to unlock these global partnerships to achieve the UN targets, to really follow through on a scale that matters over the next 10 years. I think it's fair to say our existing decade of action, we've got organised. We know what we're doing, we know each other. But what we need to do going forwards is to truly unlock those global partnerships for scale So again, I want to recognise our partners for this event, the World Bank Global Road Safety Facility, the International Transport Forum, and our supporters, as always, the FIA Foundation, who make all of this possible. And your announcement today means a lot to us and all of our team, as well as UK Aid as well. So thank you to everyone who's been a partner for this event. But more importantly, we want to focus now on what's ahead. And a starting point is to just reflect on the decade of action. What has happened over the last 10 years? From iRAP's perspective, we've built these partnerships with the development banks, with the GRSF, with the FIA clubs around the world, a lot of corporates, and we've delivered results over that period, and results that we're very proud of, those partnerships that are now in more than 100 countries worldwide. That we have over 1 million kilometres of roads assessed. And as we were saying earlier today from Lord Robertson, importantly, as we say in iRAP, we have not saved a life until the road is upgraded. So our partnerships with the development banks and the financing needed to upgrade these roads, with governments, with private sector, are essential to make sure that these roads we elevate to 3-star or better on a scale and speed that matters. So what does it take to reach the global targets? We have this new goal to halve road deaths and serious injuries by 2030. We have to do that. We can't let the decade of action failure where we haven't reached the targets of this past decade hold us back. We have to pull together everyone in this room and say, what are we going to do differently over the next 10 years? What are the new partnerships we form? And it's great we'll be announcing a new partnership with the Inter-American Development Bank today, with the European Investment Bank this week. We're working on these new partnerships to make sure we will get the scale change that has to happen. And don't overcomplicate this. I think it's simple in terms of target 3 and 4, the global targets, where it just says, don't build any brand new killer roads. Make sure new roads that you're financing are at least 3-star or better for all road users. We can do that. And if you can't afford the infrastructure, then bring the speeds down, as we were just talking about there with Young Tay. You've got both levers to hit 3-star or better, so it's possible everywhere. What do we need to do together? If all of us locked ourselves in this room for the rest of the week and said, how can we make sure that there are no brand new killer roads built? Can we do a quick survey? What star rating do you think this road might be for vehicles? Any takers? 2? 2 or 3? That's about right. What do you think the star rating might be for pedestrians and cyclists? 0. Well done. Well, you can all come and work for iRAP now. Congratulations. I mean, again, this isn't rocket science. They've just built a brand new road. Super proud of it. Another 4-lane road through a village. Awesome. Another 0-star for pedestrians. Can you imagine how many sad families there's going to be in that community for the next 20 years? What are we doing? We can stop that happening. We can unlock the partnerships for that to never happen again. No country can afford to build a road like that because you'll be paying for it for the next 20 years. So what are the partnerships we can all form in this room, in high-income countries, low and middle alike, to make sure we ensure the safety of new roads? And again, please don't overcomplicate this. It's about specifications. Your next big road project, let's say it's an urban project around a metro station. Make sure it's 5-star for pedestrians and cyclists on their way to the station. Fantastic. Or in the middle of a shopping precinct. That one sentence added to your specifications provides a pass mark. Road safety now has a pass mark. Accountability. We've got to make sure that the people making the decisions on finance, but also the designers, know what they're doing, know and understand the implications of their decisions. Option one, that example we just showed, a 0 1-star road that's about to be built. They should know that there's going to be 24 lives lost. And as Lord Robertson said, when we talk about the individual injuries, deaths are just the tip of the iceberg. We're talking about 85 brain injuries, 115 limb fractures over the next 20-year life of that project. If you presented that to the engineer's design drawing and said, would you like to approve and sign off on this drawing? Do you think we'd make them think again? I hope so. And evolve to where we can get to 5-star. Quality is also critical. We've seen great examples of well-designed roads that have then been built horrendously. All of the road safety features peeled off for whatever reason during construction, but still getting paid for their work. That needs to stop as well. And then we have to celebrate. One thing about engineers is they're such modest little critters. They just do their job and off they go to the next project. We have to stop and reflect and celebrate lives saved. A great example from China and iRAP, supported by Bloomberg Philanthropies and the Global Road Safety Facility, where in Yangpu district, they achieved 5-star for pedestrians and cyclists. I want 5-star cities as part of Vision Zero visions around the world. We can make this happen. And then we need to go back and update the standards that everyone applies like religion to their roads, but standards that have helped us build killer roads over the last 50 years. Change the standards. Then we get to the existing roads. How do we unlock the innovative financing that we need to actually get these upgrades going? Relationships with the development banks and the IFIs, but also the private sector. How can we bring innovative impact investment, social impact bonds, private sector investment to this problem? And once again, I think it's quite simple. If we have a long-term vision for 2030, let's say we're going to be more ambitious than 75% of travel, and we aim for 90% of travel 3-star or better by 2030. You can set up a results-based financing partnership with that country, a 10-year vision to transform travel from 1- and 2-star roads onto 3, 4 and 5. A long-term vision with long-term financing. The efficiencies of scale of doing that are significant. We also need data. I'd like you to meet Chelsea. Chelsea's 5 years, she was 5 years old when she was hit with a 4-wheel drive as a pedestrian. And I'll come back to her story a little bit. But unless we can bring the story of these injuries, these life-changing injuries, in high-income countries and low and middle alike, we will continue to underinvest in this problem. We have to understand the scale of the injury to understand the scale of the cost to our health sector, to our welfare sector, to business, communities and families. Then we'll start to understand how we can invest. And we're doing some exciting work that we'll hear about later over the next 2 days on iRAP, accelerated and intelligent RAP assessments using artificial intelligence and machine learning. What I'd love to have is a map of every road on Earth with its star rating, its fatality estimate, and an investment plan to save lives. I think we'll make it happen. And we're going to try and make sure it does happen. Because that data can drive decision-making, policy, and unlock the full potential of safer roads to save lives. But we also need innovative financing. At the core of this, the one that really sticks in my head is how can we be sitting on benefit cost ratios of 10 to 1 in infrastructure investments and not invest? What's broken? It's the best return. You can't get bonds or anything like that that are going to give you those sort of return on investments. But road safety will. So we have to have a discussion with different people, not the Transport Minister, but Treasury and the President and Prime Minister of a country. They're the ones who will understand the business case for safer roads. And I just wanted to bring up the toll road examples because We've got a great new example that's happening with the World Bank IFC in Brazil. As part of some concession roads being reconcessioned for the next 30 years, they're being concessioned on the condition that they bring the road up to 3-star or better standard for all road users. $1.3 billion of investment will drive and achieve that. So innovative private sector partnerships can be a key part of achieving this goal by 2020 or 2030 as well. And once again, we should celebrate. Every time we upgrade one of these roads, whether it's part of results-based financing partnerships in Asia, however we're doing it, we should be ribbon cutting these 4- and 5-star roads. Tell the community what great work has been done. Have the design engineer and the construction team there alongside the minister and the FIA club president. Let's start celebrating success, because saving lives is something pretty special and something that all of us have a unique opportunity to achieve. And again, what I wanted to highlight is our Vaccines for Roads new resource, because when I've been looking at why are we underinvesting even in high-income countries, it's because they all think 223 fatalities a year is doing well. Meanwhile, serious injuries are just ramping up in most of these countries. But I don't want to talk about serious injuries anymore, because they are just an amorphous mass. And we don't understand that it's somebody with severe acquired brain injury, someone with fractures to the limb. Would you like to know what degloving is? Degloving is when the skin is torn from your body if you're a motorcyclist and you come off your bike or something. You can have 5 to 10 years of rehabilitation on the back of that one injury. That is where the cost of road trauma is. That is where the burden is falling on economies. And that is where the underinvestment is happening, because we don't see the scale of this problem. So our Vaccines for Roads resource is really unlocking the human impact story. Again, this one of Chelsea. Her mum has had to give up work. She's proud of the progress Chelsea makes every day in her recovery. That's 10 years later. This is life-changing stuff for these people. We've got the power to change it. We've got the power to make the partnerships over the next 10 years. So this doesn't happen to anyone. My kids, your kids, anyone we know. And so we've tried to bring the real human stories to this, whether it be severe and brain and head injury, whether it be quadriplegia, amputations, degloving. We've painted the true stories for you to be able to think about this as an individual, not as a big number. And then this just example from Bangladesh. Bangladesh, every day, 68 people lose their lives on roads in Bangladesh. And we've got some of the painful stories, thanks to Vital Strategies and TAC, that tell the personal stories from around the world. Just like your World Bank video, so powerful. We've got to bring it back to these individuals. 558 people a day will have limb fractures in Bangladesh. 109 will suffer brain injury every day in Bangladesh. 6 people will have amputations every day in Bangladesh. We can't have sustainable development if we let this keep happening. If we keep building killer roads, if we don't upgrade the existing horrible roads quick enough, then this trauma level unsustainably will continue for too long. And so what I really challenge all of us to do, like we'll be doing with IDB and EIB, the existing partnerships with the World Bank and the facility, 102 countries around the world. If we can achieve this target for more than 75% of travel on 3-star or better roads by 2030, 450,000 lives will be saved every year. That's 2/3 of the global target coming from infrastructure upgrades and speed management. The 2 ways you can get to that 3-star or better outcome. 2/3 of the global target met if we do our job and unlock our potential. Infrastructure lasts for the next 20 years. We're talking 100 million deaths and serious injuries saved over the next 20 years. Let's work together to lift that burden, unlock the economic, financial, but human impact potential of safer roads. We can do it, and we have to. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Compelling stuff. I think it's sort of set the agenda for the next 2 days of discussion. You've got half an hour to forget about degloving before your lunch, but then you have to remember about it again, because it's this kind of human impact which has really got to fuel our anger and fuel our next 10 years of agenda. And to tell us how we're going to get there, in terms of getting society as a whole to get serious about this, it's a great pleasure to introduce Klaus Tingvall. Thanks, Klaus.
Thank you.
We're running a little bit late, so you take 15 minutes and we'll have 20 minutes conversation. Yeah, that's right.
Thank you, Saul, and all friends of traffic safety. It's great to stand here as an old man in front of you. I could have told you a lot of anecdotes, and the Swedish minister just leaving would make it even easier to tell a few anecdotes about how things actually work in the administration and in politics. I think it's more exciting than what any one of you could imagine. And how some of them call me the godfather. Well, I can promise you the only thing that it takes to be a godfather is sort of first being very naive, secondly very persistent, on the borderline of a diagnose, and to have an incredible network. That's the things you need, because you need a little bit of power behind of all the stupid things you're saying. But I can assure you that the Swedish road administration back in 1995, after 3 weeks after I've started, they said, we got the wrong man for the job. Because daring to say what you've been talking about, saying that benefit-cost ratios should be the way we manage things. You know, everything around road transport we can see it as an equation. We can vary everything. We can trade off minutes to life, CO2 to some kind of accessibility for those in a car. We can manage it all by something that looks like science. It's not. It's a very bizarre way of comparing things. You can't trade off life for some to time savings for someone else. If, and that was the other important thing that I think iRAP is very much a part of saying, you know, we can make a huge difference if we just apply the scientifically based good solutions. It's us as professionals that have people's life and hands in our hands. And if that is true, and it is, then you can't deal with these kind of trade-offs. If you have the responsibility for your own life, you can of course deal with that. If you have the responsibility of someone else's life, there's no example whatsoever in the community that we are doing the same thing as we're doing in road transport. You can't do it if you're a medical doctor. You can't do it if you build nuclear power stations. You can't do it if you're building railway systems. You can't do those kinds of trade-offs. You need to have what you call a predefined acceptable risk level. It's a figure. And you can't vote about other people's life and health in that way as you do in parliaments. Speed limit is a technical issue. It's nothing for politicians to vote about. Yeah. Anyway, I've said it all now. Now you understand why they thought they hired the wrong guy. The only thing that happened was that I got the protection of the Minister of Transport, the minister now, Thomas Eneroth's predecessors in 1995. She said when this was presented as an idea of having a sort of what you call this the Vision Zero thing, she said, what a fantastic idea, I want to hear more. And you should have seen her entourage sitting around her, the horror in their eyes. And the anger of the management of Swedish road transport. I can tell you the story about the 2+1s too, but that will be another day. It's also a very interesting story. Now, I had the role here to talk a little bit about the expert group. It's been mentioned a little bit about one of the recommendations. Thank you for that. But I was given the task as a retiree to lead a group of 13 worldwide known experts, most of them from academia, but with a long, long history of working in this sector, to do something very, not to repeat what we've all had said, because those things are very good, about targets, about results, and how we deal with traffic safety, how we measure and things like that. But the key thing was really to try to describe what we can do now when we're a part of the 2030 Agenda family. And it is a revolution, I must say so. And what we tried, and I'm still on a steep learning curve, and I think we all are in understanding what possibilities we've been offered. But we've tried to go through that quite systematically with this expert group that was set up by, WHO and the Swedish Ministry of Infrastructure, but then there was the Swedish Transport Administration that administered it all. You know, Agenda 2030 does not mean that we have a target for traffic safety only. If you believe that, then we are not using anything of the potential of the 2030 Agenda, or the SDGs, as they're sometimes called. What we've been offered is really an umbrella for working with other sectors of the community. The main ones in the 2030 Agenda being health, climate, and equity. We're a part of it. We're not a separate thing like we used to be. We're not a separate culture of traffic safety, whatever you call us. We're a part of something much bigger. That's the first insight. The next one is, of course, and it was mentioned as well, the targets, the 17 targets and the 169 sub-targets and things like that. They are what you call absolute, and they are indivisible. That's probably one of the most interesting things we have. It doesn't say you should use a benefit-cost ratio. It doesn't say that you can forget some targets. And it definitely, I mean, the consequence definitely is you can kill the transport politics that we have had. There's nothing about saving travel times in relation to traffic safety any longer. It doesn't exist. Climate, health, and equity, they are the boundary conditions for the future of the community. It's a very important, really very important insight as well. Now, as you know, many of you, transport politics are still there. It talks about the system needs to be effective and things like that. Of course it can, but we always start off with human life and climate and equity. It's about sustainability practices and reporting. And one thing you really need to be very looking at now is what you call sustainability reporting. It was a word I didn't understand what it meant a few months ago. Now I've understood that maybe it's the most important thing we have in front of us. It is where the big money looks for its return of investment. That's where the really big money starts. That's where, as you were pointing out, Rob, where the capital is seeking its return of investment, where it becomes secure, where it becomes long-term viable, where it becomes the return of investments is more than nothing. And that will happen with things in the community that's sustainable. Not sustainable operations and companies and multinational companies, they're not interesting for the capital any longer. And they are looking for our way to measure traffic safety within the value chain of multinational companies. It's about public procurement. Some say there are two things that runs the world. One is capital investment, and the other thing is public procurement. Not because it's an enormous part of the GDP, but it's also because that's where you see where politics wish to go. That's where the capital would like also to invest. It hasn't been used for traffic safety, I should say. Not at all. Here is a fantastic opportunity that will come to us very soon now. The next thing is, of course, when we, as academics and experts say, it's typical for us to say we don't trust the private sector. They just want to earn money. And we trust politics. Well, probably you need to trust logics, and you need to trust the logics and economic theory of return of investments and so on. We need to understand that the public and private parts of the community, they are so close together. So we need to understand how that will happen in the future. And that's where we come to sustainability reporting and public procurement and things like that, because they are really in cooperation, if I may say, with each other. So with those insights, and now I'll be very short, I promise you, with the insights is that don't look so much on the traffic safety targets within the 2030 agenda. Look at the other ones. Look at 12.6 and 12.7. I think that's where road safety professionals, you can wake them up in the middle of the night and they can say 12.6 and 12.7, then they learned the lesson. That's a good one. One is about public procurement, and the other thing is about how especially the multinational companies will be sustainable in terms of, through their value chain, stop killing. I can promise you, every death out there, including and even more in low and middle income countries, take place in someone's value chain. Someone's. Children are killed by vehicles on a road, very often with someone from an organization or whatever it may. Someone is out there for a purpose. It is in someone's value chain. The question is whose value chain it is. So look at 12.6 and 12.7 and you will understand so much of the world. We've done that. It was very tricky. You get very nervous. But here you can see the way we express us in the expert group. It's not so much about what we're saying in itself, like this modal shift. It's the reason why. For example, and how it links then with infrastructure is so important, of course. And I won't go through every one, I promise you. I just mentioned a couple of them. But say, if you take modal shift, what is modal shift? Well, it used to be everyone should get into a passenger car. That was the measure of how lucky we could be in the world. Now we've said it doesn't work very well. It doesn't work in the rich part of the world. It doesn't work anywhere else either. It becomes a mess. You need a modal shift where you start using all the other ways of modes of transport. And you can't hate micromobility any longer, for example. like we used to do in the road traffic safety sector. But you need to start cater for it, which I've seen you're actually starting to do now. It's so interesting. How can micromobility be safe instead of how do you get rid of it as quickly as possible? And there's so many other things. We need to not just tell the public or the citizen that you should be walking and bicycling instead, or use an e-scooter or whatever. It's about how you shape, through engineering and other things, how you shape, especially the urban areas, so you can really help people to change the mode of transport instead. And I think you have a fantastic role here. You getting nervous, Saul?
Not at all. Doing fine.
I should if I just knew my plan.
You've got 5 more minutes.
Exactly. Thank you. This is the one I talked about, and I should say, don't read the text because it's so long and so on. But the report is available on and it's in a printed version. I haven't seen it yet myself, but it should be available I think from tomorrow, something like that. But it's really about start looking for the big investments, what kind of questions they wish to raise when they're going to invest a lot of money into whatever kind of business out there. I think this is probably one of the most exciting things. It's more exciting than Vision Zero or Safe System. This is really when it starts to get so crucial. What shall a multinational company tell the investors, the public, all its customers, when it comes to their traffic safety performance and plans for the future? This is just for IKEA. It's a nice company, I can promise you. It's not worse than anyone else. But to ask the question, how many, because we know they don't have child labor any longer. But how many children are killed when you transport your goods and services across the whole world? It's not a nasty question. It could be seen or heard as a nasty question, but it's not. That's the kind of question I think every multinational must answer quite soon, within a year or two. Procurement, as I said, is an important thing. Safe vehicles, of course, very important. This one is nice, and all the time when you're going to read the report, which you all will do, it's just look at the motives instead of what we're saying in terms of improving safety. This one says, if children cannot walk or bicycle to school or the activities, it will have a massive impact on their long-term health. It's the first generation where you can foresee they're going to live a shorter time with poorer health simply because they can't walk and bicycle to their activities if they're going to be safe. We are a part of that problem. We said it was a good idea to lock them up or to put them in a car and drive them to school. It wasn't. So what does it mean if an 8-year-old child should be able to walk to school? How does that infrastructure look like? Well, it doesn't look like the one we have. So here is the combination between safety and health as really, and there's lots of them as well. And of course, as you said, the infrastructure. Now, it's not only by putting a wire rope or into something. It's really how do we adapt the infrastructure to the new community. That's going to be the real big challenge out there. And I'm very happy you mentioned this one. It makes our minister a little bit nervous in Sweden. It's good that he's left, and I can just say he shouldn't be so nervous because now Sweden is going for 40, but the real speed is going to be the 30 when you need it in those areas you need it. And we're going to do it very much. And here comes something quite interesting. Now, as you know, I said there's a couple of hype words like sustainability reporting. The next one is geofencing. You can expect not only the micromobility e-scooters, they are geofenced here in Stockholm, most of them. They can only run in 6 kilometers per hour where they should run in 6 kilometers per hour. This is going to happen with most commercial transports, public transport, taxis, Uber or whatever they're called, in a quite short timeline if we deal with this in a great way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Klaus. That was 15 minutes of revolutionary thought, and I think it's given us all a lot to ponder. Right, we have 20 minutes for questions. I'm taking 5 minutes out of your lunch break. That's my prerogative. So what I want to do is invite the panel up to the front, and then we're going to have a Q&A. You've all been sitting very quietly and politely all morning. I'm sure you must have many, many questions that are bubbling up in your heads. So think about what they are, and then we're going to start hearing them and answering them in a couple of seconds. This is it. This is safe system in action, isn't it? Yeah, perfect. So if our remaining speakers, I know a couple have left, but Kungsha Chen, George, Klaus, Young Tae. We have another microphone, I think. I think we have some roving mics. Do we, for speakers? Great. So we don't have long. Let me just give you that to share. So, our first question, please. And just to say, I think it's important for this session. We've got a lot of sessions to come in this innovation workshop over the next 2 days. I think for this session, let's try and focus the questions on issues of political accountability and scaling. And we've got these people on the platform, they've been talking. The key issue, I think, for this ministerial conference is how do we get action to happen coming out of here? And we've heard some great ideas from all of the speakers. So we can have some questions like that. First question, please. Yes, sorry, ladies first as well. Yeah.
Hi there, Gabby from Australia. We've got huge resistance to lowering speed limits, huge. And even the question of the 30k environment where it's needed and for vulnerable road users mixing with traffic, we've got huge resistance. So I'm interested in insights about changing the political conversation on that.
Okay, let's take 3 questions in a row and we'll answer them all together. Yes, lady at the back there.
Yes, good morning. My name is Marianne Dwarshuis. I work for the Royal Dutch Touring Club, ANWB. I have a question concerning road safety measures in cities, because there has been talking about financing structures to do with national and international measures, but there's a huge challenge in cities to get road safety measures financed. And I would like to have some reflection from especially the last speaker on that question.
Okay, one more question. Yes, Veronica.
Klaus, you mentioned that your boss was a woman, the minister, when you went for Vision Zero. The question is, do you think that that had to do with the courage to move forward with that? And to all panelists, what's the role of women in transport, and how could this relate to faster progress in road safety?
Thank you very much. Okay, who wants to take those questions? I mean, you can take all of them, or you can take one of them, whichever you prefer. Who wants to go first? Rob, yeah. Go.
Perhaps just the speed-related question. One of the ways you can hit 5-star performance, for example, is to bring up the infrastructure standard. But if you are bringing urban speeds down to 30 kilometres an hour, regardless of infrastructure standard, you will be 5-star for everyone. Basically, so part of how you can form a public debate with this is, well, you might be 1-star at 70 kilometres an hour, 3-star at 50, but 5-star at 30. And maybe those metrics can help frame that discussion with the community that are now aware of those sort of performance targets for vehicles and for hotels. Why not their journeys as well?
Maybe I could make a comment on the gender questions. I think gender in transport is not just about road safety. I think it's the gender element in the transport sector in general that I think we have to first recognize that the transport sector as we speak today is not gender neutral. It's because you look around, that most of the decision makers in the transport sector are men. And this is involving just not the political decision, but also particularly on the engineering side. And the deficiency of such case is that sometimes the sort of the need of a women, the female population, is not necessarily being given consideration in the design of a certain infrastructure. I think that last time I was in a PR conference, we actually at the World Bank, we organized a session on gender and transport where I get one example in my recent visit to Nepal, where we financed a road improvement on a stretch of road, something like 200 kilometers. Now that road has been in existence for the last several decades, but it's been reconstructed several times. But it was only the last time we intervened, we actually brought in one of the key member of the team was a female social development specialist. And she walked along the corridors and along with the construction, then she recognized that on that stretch of road, there was no toilet being built along that road. Because, when men design the road, they don't see the need for it, right? Because men can obviously find a solution much easier. So that's one example of the deficiency we're seeing. And I'm just giving that as one example. And the other one related to safety, obviously, on urban transport, is that in many particular developing country cities, why women are hesitant to use public transport is the issue of overcrowding and harassment against them in public transportation systems. So again, if you're talking about development issue, unless we address that, you're going to have continued lower participation of female in the labor force, and obviously undermine the development impact that we aspire to achieve. And I think the same principle apply to road safeties. Let me stop at that. Thanks.
Can I address the question about the lowering the speed limit, which is controversial? Of course it is, because inevitably people want to drive faster and get there quicker. And we have better cars now, and we want to do that. But if you're going to argue, then you have to have some basic facts behind it as well as some emotion. Well, one is that the French experience was that when they made a political decision they were going to do something about the huge number of casualties they had on the road, and President Chirac and Prime Minister and then President Sarkozy decided that they were going to take action. What they did, and this was at our Jean's high-level panel, to my astonishment, one of the members of that high-level panel is François Fillon, Prime Minister of France. And he said the biggest thing we did that made the biggest contribution was import something from the UK. Now, you got a French Prime Minister breathing the words, we imported something from the UK beneficially. It's quite a surprise. He said roundabouts. They had no roundabouts in France. And they brought in roundabouts, huge controversy about it, but it had the biggest and most dramatic impact on the amount of casualties they had on the roads. Roundabouts slow down traffic. They create situations where you don't have as many accidents as you have at junctions. And therefore, I think, speaking as a sort of humble, ancient ex-politician, you've got to boil down the message sometimes. Boil it down to make America great again or take back control, these great political messages that carry it. So what's my suggestion is slow down. Slow down. And if you had one single measure that you could introduce that would stop all the plastics in the ocean, you would do it. If you had one single measure that would stop the melting of the ice caps, you would do it. If you had one single measure that would cure HIV, AIDS, or malaria, you would do it. And we've got a solution, which is to slow down the traffic at school, slow down the traffic for pedestrians. And sometimes if we get that message over, we might actually have a chance of reducing the high casualty rate.
I will answer quickly 3 questions based on my experience. And I think reducing the speed limit is not easy. Sometimes it can be a political decision, But we have to identify the benefits coming from that measures. But if we create a new city, new capital, maybe we can design from the beginning quite flexible road structure, but basically we use existing roads while the technology develops regarding the vehicles and etc. So basically in the urban area or limited area, it's better to reduce the speed for safety reasons, but we have to convince people that this really brings benefits to the society, because it's not only transport people that are responsible for this measure, because we have to always go to the Ministry of Finance to say that this is necessary, but the Ministry of Finance guys are not transport experts, so they have to be convinced. And once we finish that, we have to go to the Parliament. They are not experts on transport, so we have to provide some scientific and evidence-based the data, as I focused on during my presentation. And city, the local government is really important, but sometimes they have some financial problems. But if we think differently, the local governments can be a really productive platform where different ministries in the central government meet. Basically, different ministries, they are also stuck in the silos and they only think about their stuff, but in the end, they can meet through the local government. So if local government leaders are creative and innovative and they can propose something new, and finally they get support from central governments from different channels. So I think that kind of governance system should be developed in the end. And women in transport is a really hot topic, but as Chen mentioned, basically in the transport sector, unfortunately, so far the majority of the people are masculine, so men. So basically we have some biased ideas. And even in the civil engineering world and the ministries where I worked in Korea, most of the people are men. So they do not really know the travel pattern of women, because definitely in the Asian countries, in other developing countries, the travel patterns are different from, between men and women. So men go to work and come back, sometimes go for drinking and come back, stay at night in office. But women, they take care of children, they go shopping, they do something else. So basically we have to understand the travel pattern and safety and even equality in employment. So basically it's not only safety and security, it also linked to the employment issues in the society. So we can expand a lot of scope treating these questions. Klaus?
Yeah, I like that idea not to complicate things, and I like that imperative slow down. But there are two things behind it we all need to understand. The first, and it's all in the expert report, by the way, so read it. The first one is, look at the motives. I'm sick and tired of that traffic safety always have to carry the motive for speed. It's no good. It sort of puts us in the wrong corner of the community and what we want to achieve. Speed is also, it's climate, it's greenhouse gases, it's vibration, it's noise, it's particles, it is a feeling of security, it's accessibility for children and for a lot of other people out there. It's everything that has got to do with livability and sustainability. That's one of the reasons why slow down is a good idea. The other one, what kind of instruments do we have? Well, who should you direct it to? Well, don't go to the police. That's not a very, very bright idea. And don't go to the individual citizens out there. Go to IKEA, go to the public procurement that all the cities has a lot with. I mean, actually, Stockholm could probably slow down the taxis, because it's also a matter of who is driving speed out there. Well, first comes the couriers, then comes the taxis, and then you can sort of sort it out exactly. Most of them you can deal with through public procurement or through talking to a few CEOs. So I like the message, but you need to know the motives and you need to understand who can really do something. And I think that's the trick. It's all in the expert report, by the way.
So read the expert report on your way to IKEA. Okay. Two more questions, very brief ones. Again, women have priority before we go to the men. No? Okay. Gentleman at the back has had his hand up for quite a while.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
A short intervention, please. Short question, not an intervention. Thanks.
Yeah, really very short. Largely to the World Bank presentation. reflecting that 93% of fatalities are in the lower middle income countries. I happen to be from there. I'm Patanjali from WHO Southeast Asia Regional Office. So my comment or the question is, how do you leverage along with the World Bank money and the money from the partnerships, the governments themselves to do that? That's not been happening. So what kind of strategies would you suggest that we combine so that we can leverage money from the government themselves rather than only putting seed money, what the World Bank or other can do?
Okay. Last question, lady in the second row.
Because of lady, but I represent here, I'm with Liberian delegation here, and I just would like to ask in the room, can you indicate who is representing developing countries here? Who is from developing countries? Just in case, yeah, 90%, according to my knowledge, 90% of traffic deaths occur in developing countries. So even the fact that here just maybe 10% of people are sitting here from developing countries says that what you are representing here in this forum right now is not going to the right target group. I've been 2 years ago in the ITF, it was even worse. And like it's already kind of positive tendency, but I think we need to make sure next time in these kind of forums more and more developing countries representatives are there, because this knowledge what you're sharing is very important and essential for them. And secondly, just about these tools, or like for example, okay, slow down. Generally it is very good, of course, indicator, or like I don't know, step and policy. But for example, in Liberia, where we have been working so far for 3 years, I'm from GIZ, German Corporation, we indicated that this is not, for example, the thing what we're gonna be doing now, but is the first issue is the helmet introduction for everyone.
Is there a question somewhere in this?
No, I'm just commenting because...
Right, short.
Yes, the last one.
There's a day and a half left
Yes.
to discuss things. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Then I'm just saying that some of the solutions are not that general as you wish to be. Yes.
Okay, thanks for
Thank
that. And the first point is very well taken about representation. Does anybody on the panel want to comment on that?
If I can respond to the question addressed to me. But I first want to say I agree with the comment made by Jana, right? I think it's very relevant, and in fact they're linked. Yes, in fact the so-called speed reduction, actually the lady asked the question from Australia, but the resistance is actually more in the developing world. Just imagine those concepts is not even really taking roots about slowing down. But let me go back to the question. Yes, I mean the World Bank, I think we really believe that the country themselves have to take ownership of these agendas. So whatever our funding from GIS and World Bank funding is playing catalytic role. And obviously we have to build the determination and build ownership. I cite example, for example, last year the government in India passed amended Motor Vehicle Act. I think we see that as a great opportunity for the government in India to take sort of ownership of this agenda. But obviously it's not easy. I think it has to be accepted by the state as well in the federal system of India. So based on that opportunity, we're actually developing a number of interventions with the government in India. One is a policy-based loan to help the federal government design a scheme to support the state, incentivize the state to take action. So our money is catalytic. I mean, because ultimately it's the government in India who will have to invest billions of dollars, and our money is like hundreds of millions. Along with that, we provide also investment lending operation at the state level for states that want to embrace this challenge.
Okay, anybody else want to comment on that? Yes, Young Tae.
I think the role of international organization is really important today, even though we cannot really provide one single answer at this stage, because it reflects the historical background of international organizations and also the data collection system, the different system in advanced nations and developing nations. So, for example, in ITF, we have 60, but we were created in 2006, only 13 years old, and with the participation of 44 European countries. long before the creation of ITF. But now we are fully aware of that we have to work together with developing worlds, and especially we are cooperating to set up observatory in developing worlds in Latin America, in Asia, even in Africa. So basically, a lot of efforts are now being made in cooperation with international partners. But I think it will take time. But we are very much aware of the fact that road safety in advanced nations are totally different from road safety in developing countries, especially in Southeast Asia, where you can see a lot of motorcyclists. Because recently, we were developing cooperation with UNESCA, for example, and ADB, and a lot of Asian friends. They said we can benchmark what's happening in developed world, but basically we need a new approach. So we all agreed, and we just started to working on that. So maybe sometime later, we might share some more developed information and ideas with you, but nevertheless, we will continue to work. And especially, it also linked to the outreach activities of international organizations. So we are now having more and more new members from non-European regions. For example, this year, we will have Uzbekistan, and I know that Cambodia and Mongolia, they also are in the final stage for the procedures to join the ITF, and etc. So basically, we will try to identify the empty slots and try to make up for the better the cooperation in the field. So you can also cooperate with us, and we know that nobody should be left alone. So we will do our best.
Thank you. We'll take up that invitation, I'm sure, Liberia. Right, I'm going to close session now. I just want to give a final word, if he wants it, to Klaus, because he's been very provocative in terms of coming up with some ideas, and he's authored the expert report, which is the intellectual underpinning of this entire conference, and hopefully will give it a legacy that we can all be proud of. So, Klaus, is there anything final you'd like to say? There's one thing that you think we should be doing to achieve Rob's vision of 450,000 fewer deaths on the road by 2030 a year.
Oh, goodness.
Sorry, I threw that into you. No advance warning, but I knew you were equal to the task. Thank you.
No, but just one thing, and that is, I don't think we need to excuse ourselves when we say safety stands above, or human life and health stands above mobility. Is really the precursor, the courage. No, the responsibility we have for life and health. And the next one that comes together with that, we can make all the difference. We are like a medical community that have a vaccine. Don't be ashamed of that, or don't excuse ourselves from doing that. We can actually change it without ruining the livability of the community. In fact, we're making it better. And I can sometimes hear that we all the time we need to sort of declare that, you know, the mobility didn't, or the speeds didn't come down or something like that. I don't think we have to excuse ourselves for doing what we're doing. That's my only message.
Thanks very much. And I think that gives us a great sort of launch pad for the rest of the discussion in this innovation workshop over the next day and a half. And thanks to all of you for attending. Can we thank our panel, please? Thank you. So now I believe there's a lunch break, and we'll be back in the room, or you'll be back in the room. I've got another event, which is going to be great if any of you want to come. I shouldn't say that. 1:30. Thank you.